had that with P. Diddy. I went over to say hello to P. Diddy, and Jay-Z was there, and Leonardo DiCaprio was sat.
I think you've dropped enough names.
Room, 2 floors below him, directly below, and saw the body fall through. Looking out the window, saw the body fall, and obviously heard the aftermath.
Heard your interview earlier. You met P. Diddy and Jay-Z. Is that the coolest moment?
Well, these two went to a gangster party.
Yeah, full of watches and. He would always message me ever since we broke up, like, oh, I'm not well. He would always play with death and be like, well, I'm gonna die. I'm not doing well.
There's some stuff that I've definitely never spoken about to do with it that was really severe. It was only until I saw myself after that I was like, right, I need to fix myself. So at a certain point I thought, well, I'm going to have a party for one. And that just seemed to carry on throughout.
Fell 3 floors from a hotel balcony. Pictures then taken inside showed the damage he'd done and the empty packets of over-the-counter drugs. Saying he'd been drinking and taking drugs alone in his room.
I saw him and get him to the Greek. I'm going to go over there and say hello to him. So I thought, P. Diddy. So I went out to shake his hand. And I shook his hand and I was, oh, nice to meet you. And he's just going, with the longest handshake ever. He did his eyes like, when is this going to end? and then the worst of it happened. There was a whole thing with Jay-Z and I went to lean in to speak to him. But you can't lean in to speak to Jay-Z. You're not.
Very popular singer, part of the band One Direction. Most people know him from that. But he fell from a hotel balcony several feet up in Buenos Aires. And now there is a 911 call that's offering more details about what actually happened. We have the clip right here. I'm going to play it for you. It's in Spanish, but you'll be able to see the translation here as well. Let's look at this clip.
Hola, buenos días. Recién llamé que se me acordó. Llamo del Hotel Casa Sur Palermo, Costa Rica 6032.
¿Qué sucede en el lugar, señor?
Bueno, tenemos un huésped que está sobrepasado de droga y alcohol y bueno, cuando está consciente está rompiendo toda la habitación y bueno, necesitamos que manden a alguien, por favor.
Bajo efectos de alcohol y estupefaciente, ¿no, señor?
Sí, correcto.
Me dijo Costa Rica, ¿a qué altura, señor? Discúlpeme.
Costa Rica 6032.
Esto pertenece a Capital, ¿no? Entre Arevalo y Kramer.
Sí.
¿Hotel, me dice? ¿Cómo se llama el hotel?
Casa Sur Palermo. Y necesitamos que nos envíen a alguien urgente porque, bueno, yo no sé si corre riesgo la vida del huésped. Está en una habitación que tiene balcón y, bueno, estamos un poco con temor de que haga algo que le ponga en riesgo su vida.
¿Hace cuánto que está ahí o es un hotel de vivienda?
No, es hace 2 o 3 días que está acá.
Comprendo, no sabría ningún dato porque no pueden ingresar, ¿no?
No.
Notificamos a lo que es el personal de SAME. También, ¿escuchó?
Sí, lo que yo te pido es que venga alguien urgente.
Now, a lot of information coming in there. They know he's destroying the room, but they can't get in. And they also mentioned the balcony, which is kind of weird. Why are they worried about? Did something get mentioned through the door? A lot of details still coming in, but this is the room. Allegedly, this is the room. And now TMZ, as New York Post, reporting, showing some images of the destruction from the room. So that is apparently what happened, is he was destroying this room. I can't show you all the paraphernalia that's all over, but there was paraphernalia on the floor. I imagine they'll be all over, breaking down what, fingerprints, etc. I don't see anybody trying to imply any sort of foul play. But yeah, he was trashing the room before the balcony fall, and the hotel staff clearly was worried, knowing there was a balcony there.
About to heat up.
No, what we've heard in that 911 call is that the hotel staff feared for Liam's safety. It's not necessarily their responsibility to intervene, but they turned to those whose responsibility it would be. In one sense, this is an all too familiar scene, a pop star alone in a hotel, perhaps turning to alcohol or other substances, but also inflicting a little damage on the hotel room. That's one thing we've learned from that 911 call. And that's a familiar story. What happened next and what ultimately happened, the tragedy of what happened, well, it's a little too familiar, but it is not the way things usually go. And it's devastatingly sad because this 31-year-old man leaves behind a 7-year-old child, and as we were hearing earlier, has been famous for more than half his life and globally famous. This is a huge loss for a very engaged generation of pop fans.
And I think what's also clear is that he himself was very open, and we saw a bit of that in Max's report about his struggles in the past with addiction, with mental health, with bullying online, with some abuse. It sort of highlights the fact that you can be incredibly famous, successful, wealthy, beautiful, but in the end you're still human, and you still have a human heart, and you can still really struggle and feel very alone at times.
That is all too true. We're talking about someone who, as a child, struggled with health issues. He had kidney problems. At 12 years old, took up boxing because of bullying he had suffered at school. So in some sense, what he talked about, the bullying he felt online once he was an adult and a star, the sense of isolation, his mental health struggles, his substance abuse struggles, these were things that had been with him for quite some time. It is all too true that although pop stars are enormously famous and adored by millions and millions of people, they are often very isolated. They're under intense pressure. They're subject to extreme isolation and great deal of boredom. And it is very, very difficult for these young people.
Yeah, I think there's a message in there very quickly about the pressure that's put on children, quite frankly, in this industry, but in other industries, and whether or not, particularly when things end. And obviously the band broke up many years ago now, but what happens when some of that fame dissipates, some of the success dissipates, but you're still a person of interest. But also I think they need to reach out to anybody around you that you know could be struggling, whether they're calling you or not.
I think that's absolutely right. This is a pop star, and this is someone who is enormously famous and wealthy and still struggles with these issues. But we see many people around us in our lives, in our families, who struggle with similar issues. And we do need to reach out to those people at moments like this. It's a particularly vulnerable and difficult time for those who might struggle with depression, who might struggle with some substance abuse issues, when someone famous has...
Girl, have you heard the latest? 50 Cent is out here calling out the streets, and the word on the block is that Liam Payne is the latest artist to be sacrificed in the music game. But how does a One Direction heartthrob end up tangled in this hip-hop beef? We're about to spill some piping hot tea on this wild industry drama. 50 Cent isn't holding back, and Diddy's reputation is on the line. You don't want to miss this explosive story that's got everyone talking.
Was this accidental? Did he do it on purpose? Was he on stuff that made him do it? Where did he get these substances is another big question. Many outlets trying to figure out and secure the dealer, like who gave this to him. So there's still a lot of questions regarding that. Fans are now also livid at his ex-girlfriend. Reports coming in from people saying that he was extremely overwhelmed by legal issues with his ex, Maya, before his death. And now One Direction fans are harassing her, saying it's her fault. It's getting pretty ugly there. She, didn't help matters by calling it out and making it a thing on her TikTok literally days ago, talking to the One Direction haters directly, calling them out. I hate TikTok. It never plays when you need it to play, but there it is. She was calling them out saying, you don't know the full story, so you can't chime in on this.
And kind of break it down. So I've been seeing ones like this everywhere.
They're called.
Honestly, ones that say she needs to keep his name out of her mouth. She's obsessed, blah, blah, blah. They broke up years ago. Well, I made a 5-second TikTok about something he talked about on a podcast.
I don't even get on this. Leave her alone. Leave her alone. You can have your feelings on this, but this is where it's now getting uglier. More and more posts regarding this issue. It's just really depressing. It's depressing because this kid had a 7-year-old kid. And obviously depressing because he was only 31 years old. And on his birthday this past August, he talked about his son, who he shares with an ex, a separate ex, Cheryl Cole, I didn't get any dad socks yet, but I'm going to speak to my son in a little bit, which I'm really excited about. Bless him. He didn't really ever show his kid, but he always talked to the fans about his kid. Clearly very in love with his boy. He's so big now. He's a big boy, and he looks like a mini me, as if we need any more me in the world. But clearly very in love with his son. Here we are now, Daddy, bless him, made me want to cry. He said something really cute this week because I can see a lot of myself in him. He was like, oh, we need here now, Daddy, bless him, made me want to cry. Look, that's awful, man. It's awful how this is going to affect the kid and so many others. This man was way too young. It's so tragic what he got caught up in. Addiction really is a killer. It's so bad. It's so hard to break down and get out of. And I feel for him. I will wait for more information to come in, but this clip is hard to deny. So many of you have been sending it to me. Again, I don't think there's any connection here personally, but it's just haunting and eerie to see this clip now, knowing all we did as we look back at Liam and things he said. Let's watch.
I had that with P. Diddy. I went over to say hello to P. Diddy, and Jay-Z was there, and Leonardo DiCaprio was sat.
All right, I think you've dropped enough names. I think people thought Prince and Brian Ferry was good. We don't need to hear about other people who are in the room. Just stick on the people the story's about.
Wish this guy would shut up. It's almost like he's saving Leo, which we're going to talk about in depth later today and tomorrow at Friday, 12 noon Eastern on members only section here and on Patreon. We're going to talk about Diddy and Leo. You're not going to miss it. I'll put more details in the pinned comment in the description, so check it out. Also, part 2 of our interview with Dale about Leo. Again, you're not going to miss these two. We'll talk about this as well. I digress. Let's go back to the clip.
So I went over and I was trying to think who's the easy target in this scenario. Who's the one that you go to say the hello? And I'm thinking, I saw him and get him to the Greek. I'm going to go over there and say hello to him. So I thought, P. Diddy.
To Diddy.
So I went out to shake his hand. And I shook his hand and I was, oh, nice to meet you. And he's just going, but the longest handshake ever. And I'm like sat there just looking in P. Diddy's eyes like, when is this going to end? And then the worst of it happened. There was a whole thing with Jay-Z and I went to lean in to speak to him. But you can't lean in to speak to Jay-Z. You're not allowed to lean in. And his bodyguard just like shoved me like this, and I went flying across the room. And I was like, right, I'm just going to go and sit over here with Eddie Golden. Thank you, that's enough. Very awkward moment.
Strange, man. This is strange. Evil laugh. Fearful of Diddy. When are you going to let go? What's going on? All these things now, knowing what we know, are definitely creepier. There's just and then, yeah, everybody seems to know. Yeah, Diddy's weird. Diddy's creepy. But you can almost hear an innocence here from Liam, where he's just like, are you going to let go? What's going on? Not knowing what we know now through all these lawsuits, allegedly, where Diddy would be almost, I can't say the word, but, searching for the right person to see who's down. Are you DTF? Or can I just have my way? That's the things we're learning. And it does seem like this clip sort of implies he got away. Thank God to hear that. But watching this now, after knowing of the tragic loss, it makes the whole thing just...
Hotel manager reportedly called 911 and reported that there was a guest who was at the hotel who was overwhelmed with drugs and alcohol. That was the way it was described. He was smashing up the hotel room and they needed assistance. So this was an emergency type call. The operator questioned the claim about drugs and alcohol being involved, but the manager seems to insist that there are drugs and alcohol. This guest is out of control and we need help and assistance here. Then expressed concern that the guest's life was at risk, noting that the individual had been staying in the room for 2 to 3 days. This is Liam who they're talking about, and mentioned that the hotel balcony was a concern. So you can imagine that maybe the scenario is playing out and he's threatening perhaps jumping from the hotel balcony. So a very, very serious sort of frenetic call in these final moments. And by the time the cops arrive, Liam had fallen or jumped to his death from that 3rd floor room. It was about 40 to 45 feet high, and he perished from the injuries that he sustained during that fall. we're getting a picture that's starting to be painted, right, Charlie? Like, we've heard that witnesses in the lobby beforehand saw him behaving erratically, smashing a laptop, maybe having to be escorted up to his room because he was causing a scene in the public lobby, carried up, escorted up. In any event, he was not in the right headspace in the moments before his death. This seems to lend credibility to the idea that this was an impulsive act rather than something that was considered for a long time, which suggests that drugs and alcohol may have been involved. He battled these demons.
Right. I mean, yeah, he did battle these demons publicly for years. And he had, friends and family and girlfriends and ex-girlfriends talking about their concern for the pop star who had obviously was going down a path. And he himself, would talk about death and just just existential type, he didn't think he was going to be around forever, apparently. And so
he was really a tormented artist,
yes,
right? And he
yes.
had discussed openly, as you said, I think he described them as severe suicidal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
At a point in time, he had done a stint in rehab where he had maybe straightened out for a period of time. But this was a constant struggle for Liam. He was also one of the principal songwriters for One Direction. And sometimes artists, their greatness comes from this kind of torment and turmoil, and that's where the creativity is drawn from. So you can imagine this sort of tortured artist writing these lyrics and just sort of wrestling with a lot of issues that he was able to, channel into art. And sometimes it gets the better of you.
So the cops arrive, having responded to a call about Liam being aggressive, and they arrive at the hotel and it's too late. He's already dead. What happens from there? They go and they see that they can't revive him. People at the hotel, I imagine, are shocked. What happens around the scene, when this happens?
Yeah, look, Buenos Aires is a developed part of the world. I mean, they have the same or similar protocols that we have in the United States. First responders will come. There have been photos of setting up a perimeter around what is the scene of the event. They obviously cover up the body down there, but there's a lot of hotel guests, and there's going to be lurid pictures and witness accounts of this because it was done in such a public setting. Buenos Aires is a huge city. There was nothing they could do to revive him, apparently, from the injuries that he sustained from the fall. Maybe serious blunt force trauma, head injuries, things of that nature. His death was likely swift, and there was nothing that they could do. And now there will be an investigation. I mean, they have to do an investigation. We'll hear more details come out from the police and so forth, so they can determine the cause of death. Because as you said, a fall, a jump, they're treating it as an apparent suicide at this point. That's what all of the evidence to this point shows. No foul play or anything of that nature. But it does remain to be seen. You have to sort of continue to follow this story, and that's why I think the coverage will be important to sort of.
One last thing to add about as TMZ has been reporting on this. Shame on TMZ. Just want to properly call TMZ out because we saw this. We broke this yesterday. And we broke this news while we were live. It was happening. We got it. Actually, people were telling us rumors before it even went on TMZ, which is usually calls. I'm not trying to take credit for it, but I say that because we saw it happen live on the show yesterday, where as TMZ was breaking the news with this very article, they showed pictures of his body on the floor. It was disgusting. Absolutely disgusting of TMZ. And there's a lot of outrage online, as there should be. TMZ has now quietly removed those images. They're like, well, we just showed the arm to show you that it's his tattoos to confirm it. It's like, bro, you don't show anybody's body who's unalived on the floor, even just a part of it. That's disgusting. They have no shame, TMZ. They're the worst. And they've now thankfully removed it, but still talking about it in here. TMZ has seen a photo. You showed the whole world the photo showing his body on the deck. You can clearly see his tattoos. And the previous version, which we had in our live out of accident because we didn't know what we were looking at, shame on them. They are disgusting. They have no remorse, no shame. I think legally they did finally remove it because they realized, oh crap, we can't show that. But shame on them. And sending so much love and positivity out to Liam's family, friends. This is just a heartbreaking loss that so many are still very shocked by. A lot of reactions pouring in. In fact, we just got notice as we're here. Britain's Got Talent is now canceled. Now, for those that don't know, they were discovered through, I guess it was the X Factor, Simon's other show. But Yeah, he's now obviously, it's a loss for all these guys. It's a super big loss. This is a really sad day. This kid was way too young. I call him a kid. 31 still to me a kid, younger than me. He had so much life left. So many fans out there wanting to support him, and he was clearly struggling behind the scenes. There are clips of him now talking about how he held it well.
All right, girl, let's break down this messy situation. We've got 50 Cent and Diddy, two hip-hop heavyweights who've been beefing for years. These guys are more than just rappers, they're moguls with empires that stretch far beyond music. 50 Cent, aka Curtis Jackson, came up from the streets of Queens and turned his rap career into a full-on business empire. He's got his fingers in everything, from TV shows to vodka, and let's not forget, he's always ready to stir up some drama on social media. The man's got no filter, and that's why we love him. Now, Diddy, or Sean Combs, or whatever name he's going by these days, has been running the game for decades. From Bad Boy Records to Ciroc Vodka, this man has more businesses than he's got stage names. But lately, the streets have been whispering about shady dealings behind the scenes. But wait, how does Liam Payne fit into all this? The last time we checked, he was crooning love songs with One Direction, not spitting bars with the rap elite. Here's where it gets interesting. Liam's been trying to make it as a solo artist since 1D split, but things haven't been smooth sailing. Word on the street is that Liam's been hanging around Diddy's circle, trying to get that hip-hop edge for his music. He's been posting pics with rappers, hitting up the clubs, and even got himself a face tattoo. But girl, has it paid off? His last single barely made a blip on the chart.
For the guest's life because of the balcony. Fans the world over are now in mourning. And Eyewitness News reporter Ashley Mackey joins us now with more on that. Ashley?
As teenagers, Liam Payne and the rest of One Direction burst on the scene back in 2010 on the show The X Factor. Since then, the British pop boy band has seen international stardom. Now, with the announcement of Payne's passing, fans all across the world have been reacting to this sudden loss. After the news of Liam Payne's death, fans in Argentina gathered at Casa Sur Hotel, sang his songs, and laid out flowers as a memorial to the global star. And a day later, fans are still reeling. We spoke with one woman in LA who grew up listening to the band.
I didn't believe it. I was very shocked. I had to look through multiple sources just to confirm that it's true.
Psychiatrist Dr. Evita Limon Rocha wants people to know that feeling sad is perfectly normal. She says even though we may not know the person, it's the music that connects us.
Different artists and different musicians are there with us as we grow and feel and experience life. So it makes a lot of sense that when someone that had such an impact with their art, that had such an impact on our own memories, that we feel an emotion or have an emotional response to their passing.
Many fans like Bianca say they didn't believe the news at first.
I think that I was very shocked and just surprised because he's so young, and I think that it kind of puts into perspective like how many years it's been since One Direction, and like, oh, we're all older now.
Dr. Evita says the grief may come in waves, and while this is normal, it's important to be mindful of the ways we cope.
We may feel loss in a lot of different ways, and that's okay. However, if we ever feel that grief is impacting our well-being or impacting our relationships or our work or our school, then it's important to reach out for help.
Dr. Evita also mentioned something else unique to the times, social media. She says it's important to check in with ourselves. And
Maya Henry has said to, on podcasts, on her own social media, she was, talking very, she was giving a lot of details about Liam that maybe he wouldn't want out there. She had just released a book that was a fiction, but it was a fiction because she says it was based on a true story. She changed the names, she changed the places, and it was about, a pop star who went from clean cut to drug addicted, and some of the stuff she says in her story, or I don't know, shocking. And she also talks about
the fiction is thinly veiled. They were a known couple, so he could have felt like everyone's going to know it's me.
Right.
The walls are closing in on me, and that can be an overwhelming feeling for a young person.
And she talks about how he didn't want the book to come out, and he also all of these just things in his private life was starting to come out more and more, especially with the cease and desist. God knows what else is going to happen. She talks about how he would raise death to her as almost at the time, and the time was only a few days ago. She said she thought it was a manipulation tactic, which I think is quite understandable. She took that he was saying, "I'm going to die soon" to her as so that he would get something out of her, or that he would just control her more. And I think I really do understand her having that reaction at the time. Looking back on it now, maybe he was really trying to tell you something, but I don't think a lot of the internet, I think, is unfairly coming for Maya.
We have to be careful how we talk about this. She's going to wrestle with a lot of emotion. She knew him very well. This was someone she was engaged to be married with. Even if they had a messy breakup at one point, they loved each other very deeply by all accounts. And so, assigning blame and all of these things, which the internet is quick to do. And I'm sure she will be going through it. It's just awful. It really is. For her to endure that in the midst of this, people end their lives for various reasons, but, blaming another person, there's a lot going on in a person's head. And so I think that's pretty reckless, and, we shouldn't engage in it, and we don't, but it is out there. This is the way this story is going to be reported. This is the way media, and so people are going to have access to this, and I think it's responsible to sort of always contextualize that he just had a very complicated life. He really did.
Right. And a really sad part of it is just he leaves behind a son, Bear, who's 7 years old. He had with Cheryl Cole, who's also a famous singer over in England. And I mean, as every dad does, I mean, he loved that kid. He talked about how much his favorite thing in the world was driving that kid to school and dropping him off. And it's just...
Yeah, we're both parents. We can really relate to that element of it. You have a young kid, and it adds to...
And famous people in general are coming out and reacting to this. Simon Cowell, who was obviously responsible for putting One Direction together in the first place.
I mean, he was the paternal figure behind the band. They started on X Factor.
Right.
He assembled them together to become this mega sensation. And they really were in the 2010s. No one was bigger than One Direction. They've canceled his taping of Britain's Got Talent, another show where he tries to spot the next big talent. I mean, this is Simon Cowell's thing. And I imagine he sees these kids sort of as his surrogate children, right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we've heard from Ty Dolla $ign, Charlie Puth, Paris Hilton, Zed, Juicy J, Shawn Mendes, Joe Exotic has weighed in. But
all of the comments, though, are loving sort of remembrances of Liam, because what happens, regardless of how things end, you strip away sort of the negativity, and there's just sort of all that's left is sort of fondness at this juncture. So it's a very, very sad story. We should go to some comments. I mean, people are reacting to this story. So
yeah, so I mean, we've been going live and people have been leaving their comments about Liam Payne today. Ms. Courtney Renee talks about how mental health matters. And yeah, it's going
to be a big issue going forward. This is going to bring that into sharp relief, right?
Yeah.
People are going to think about drugs, alcohol, and mental health and that whole issue for a period of time as they process this.
Talks about how these must have been really terrible final moments for Liam Payne. I mean, you got that podcast Last Days. This is his last day. Seemed like it was, a bit torturous.
Terrible. I mean, that comment says it all in 3 words. When you hear that 911 call, it's impossible to think of this as anything other than awful.
And finally, Tanya Dolphy says, we never know what is on a person's mind when they do something. We can't judge anyone. Very true. I mean, looking at the final videos of him in Argentina, at his hotel, smiling, interacting, singing, being like the celebrity that fans want. If you run into your favorite celebrity, you want them to be like Liam Payne outside that hotel. Like, he was so lovely.
Yeah.
And for him to be going through something so dark, probably, using drugs potentially around that time.
The age really strikes me as I become sort of the elder statesman here. I think, man, if I could just be there and pull him aside and say, you're 31. This is the prime of life. This is supposed to be the decade where you've got success a little bit, you have a little money in your pocket. Everything is.
Now here's where 50 Cent comes in. He's been watching this all play out and is not buying it. 50 has a nose for BS. And he thinks something fishy is going on between Diddy and Liam. He's been dropping hints on social media, calling out Diddy for using young artists and then tossing them aside when he's done. But what could Diddy possibly gain from sacrificing Liam's career? That's the million-dollar question, honey. Some folks are saying it's all about control and power in the industry, while others think it could be a way to launder money or cover up other shady dealings. Whatever it is, 50 Cent seems convinced it's not on the up and up. The first hint of this alleged manipulation surfaced when Liam's career took a nosedive right after he started associating with Diddy. Suddenly, his music wasn't getting the same push, his social media presence dwindled, and he wasn't booking big gigs anymore. It was like he went from pop royalty to industry outcast overnight. People started connecting the dots when they saw Liam at Diddy's parties, looking lost and out of place. There were whispers about bad contracts, promises of collaborations that never materialized.